Hello, hello, hello. Let me adjust this camera just a little bit so that we can begin our next block in this May 20 block series that I'm doing. So I am making 20 quilt blocks in the month of May, at least one every day. On the weekend, it might be two. So today is Saturday. And I have these four gorgeous fabrics. These colored fabrics are batik, and this is a light gray fabric that I had left over in my stash that I wanted to use up, but also work on my block making techniques. So I have here everything that I need to make the Haze Corner block. The pattern that I'm using is by Patchwork Square, and I'm going to alter it just a little bit. And I'll talk about how I'm going to alter it and the reason why behind it. So the directions give you everything that you need to make three different types of blocks. So you can make a 12-inch finished block, a 9-inch finished block, or a 6-inch. I am going to be making a 12-inch finish. That means it's going to be 12 and a half as it stands alone. Once it goes into the quilt, those little 1/4-inch seams all the way around will give it a 12-inch finish. So in order to work this, I need the following measurements, and I'll share with you just a little bit. I have these little cornerstones that are going to work in here. And the suggestion was to cut out at least six of the squares. Instead of doing that, I had two that had to be by themselves, but I'm going to strip piece those. So I'm using a whole strip rather than cutting them down individually because it's faster. So then to go along with that four patch that I'm going to make, I'm using this background. Around the edges, we're using these. So I'm sorry. So these should be at least 2.5 by 10. And so we need four. So four of these would be 2.5 plus 2.5, which is 5, and then double that would be 10. So I gave it a little extra to have wiggle room when I subcut them, and I'll show you how I do that. But it's easier to do it this way than it is to do the individual little squares. So from there, we have our next piece of fabric. I shifted some things around. This is my background. This is part of the background. This is the other part. They suggest cutting 4 and 7/8. I don't deal with eighths, so I went straight to 5. This is my third fabric. My third fabric, I just needed one of these. They say to bisect this by cutting it on the diagonal. We're going to save that until the end because it's going to be easier that way. And then last but not least, we need 2.5 by 4.5, 6 of these, and 2.5 by 4.5, and we only need 2 of these. So here's everything that we need, and let's get started. Let's get these 4 patches out of the way first. So we're just going to line up this fabric, and again, don't worry about the fact that it's off. As long as I have at least 10 inches, like I said, I went a little over just based off of the scraps that I had, and we will trim those up. So I'm just going to stitch these. Okay. And then I'm going to open these up and press. You I've always said in every video, it is up to you whether you want to press to the dark side, press to the light side, press the seams open. It it's personal preference. Sometimes it matters when we're talking about the thickness near a seam, depending on how you're planning on quilting it, but it's up to you. I like pressing to one side when I need to nest my seams. but you can also match those seams up just as nicely. So here is this final piece that we have. And what we are going to do is subcut them. So we can use any ruler that will work for us. The height of this should be 4.5. So when I line this up, because we started with 2.5 by 2.5, and that's 5 inches if there was no seam butted up against each other. And then 2.5, take off a 1/2 inch for the seam allowance, and what you're left with is 4.5. So we're going to line everything up. We're going to cut that excess off so we have a nice straight edge. Then we're going to turn this, and we are going to cut 2.5 inches. So we are subcutting at 2.5. And this is how we're going to get our units without sewing those individual small pieces together. It really is just, it's a pain, and it's just, this is an easier way to do this than to use those individual blocks. And again, this is up to you which way you want to do it. It's just when you can see a strip piece method working in your future, you run for it. And hopefully, I'm just going to make it with that because, again, I did 10 inches. I might not make it with it. I'll do another one if I don't. Just made it. So sometimes it's a little easier to go a little higher, but I made it with those. So here are those units. And what we're going to do is nest them together. Using our seams, we'll just get right in there, line those up, and then we just kind of use our fingers to mush them a little bit just to get them to line up. We can clip it or hold it, that's up to you. Just lower my presser foot while I'm holding it with one hand. I can hold that down with my finger. Okay, and then let's do the other one. So we're making Hayes Corner. And we are just working on the 4-patch unit for the block. Okay, they're chain pieced together. Use your scissors, or I use my rotary cutter. And if everything lines up, we get a 4-patch. I can either press these open, or I can do what we call spin the seam, and it gives us this nice little 4-patch on this side. And then all of the seams are going in opposite directions. And we'll use our iron just to press those flat. And here is our unit. And that unit should about measure 1, 2, 3, 4.5 all the way around. Do the same thing for the other one. This works only when you nest your seams. You can kind of open those up and then finger press it a little bit, take it to your iron, and just press them down. Make sure everything is nice and flat. And again, this should be at about 4.5 inches square. So these squares are done. So those two 4-patch squares are now finished, and we're ready to work on our half square triangles. We're going to take the 2 pieces of fabric, place them right sides together. We're going to draw a line right on a diagonal on one of the fabric pieces. Okay, that is our line it's our cutting line. So in their directions, they had us pre-cut these. I don't see the need to pre-cut them because after we sew a 1/4 inch on either seam, we're going to cut it right on that line anyway. But what it also does is it helps to hold the fabric together. This is the stretchiest part of the fabric. It's called the bias. And so by holding these together, when you're stitching them, they don't wave or bow, if you will, as much as they would if I pre-cut them. So we're going to leave them as is and just stitch on either side of the line. Okay. So you can see the lines. I'll show you a little bit up closer here. You have that center cut line, and then there's a 1/4 inch on either side. We'll take our straight edge, line that back up with that line that we drew, and we're just going to cut. Okay. So traditionally, what we would have done with that pattern is we would have cut these, and then we would have just stitched a 1/4 inch. So either way, it's the same thing. We can open these up. Again, you make your decision whether you want to press to the dark side or press open, but just take it to your iron and give it a great press. When you press, the iron lays flat on your fabric. It does not move all around. When it moves around like this, it is called ironing. And what we're trying not to do is to distort our fabric. Our fabric has a lot of weave in it, and as I said before, the bias has the most amount of pull, and what we don't want to do is pull it out of shape and then it distorts our block when we're finished. So we want to keep that as all the sides as straight as possible. Okay. So we're just going to trim off some of these little dog ears, these are called, as well as just make sure that our block is the size that we want it to be. And I did the math. What I love about some patterns is they'll tell you along the way what the measurements of the subunits should be. But I can't be mad at somebody who's giving me a pattern for free. Now, if I'm paying for your pattern, I want that information. I want you to take the time to tell me what I need to do when I'm making the blocks because I'm paying for the pattern. I cannot be mad at somebody who did something for me for free and then I have to do a little bit of thinking. If I'm paying for it, I don't want to do any thinking. If I'm not paying for it, then I will absolutely do all. Then I want you to do all the thinking. If I'm not paying for it, then I need to do all the thinking. If you're getting the money for this, I want you to do the thinking. Make sure I said that right. I'm paying you to think. I'm paying you to tell me what to do. If I'm not paying you, I'll figure it out on my own. Or I'll adjust the pattern and make it work for me. So again, we're measuring these to 4.5. I'm making sure that the diagonal line goes right through the diagonal of my ruler. Some of the rulers will have that set up for that 45-degree angle. This one doesn't. And again, you get what you pay for. I didn't pay much for those rulers, so I can't expect much out of them. I can't even be mad. Even though in this day and age, they should have it. Okay, so we have our 2 half square triangles that are ready to go. So our 2 4 patches are ready to go. Our 2 half square triangles are ready to go. And we're ready to work on the next part of this haze corner. And that's like doing a border, if you will, around around these units. Okay, so if I want these, they're going to look like this. So I'm going to build units around here. So I need 2 of these and 2 of these. And they're going to get built around the unit. Like that. Okay, so that means that these, because they're the same length, need to get sewn first, then press them open, and then add these sides. Line those up. Let's do the next one. Line those up. Okay. So we'll press these open. Again, you'll make your decision whether you want to press to the dark side or press your seams open. It is totally up to you. Okay. 4.5 plus 2.5 is 7. Take away the seam allowance is 6.5. Line those up. Take those back to my machine and stitch. So I do, in a lot of times I mention, especially when it's a free pattern again, the dimensions, just so that like in your head, you're thinking about what this looks like, how it should measure up, because then it should make sense. And if you're off, you're going to catch that you're off. Or as you're going along, if you know the measurements, you can see if they work to make the size block that you're attempting to make. Because I want this, when it is finished, this quilt block should be 12.5 inches. And as I'm going, it needs to make sense that it's working its way to 12.5 inches. And I know that it is because I'm getting ready to finish up now what is going to be a 6.5 inch block. And 6.5 plus 6.5 are 13. Take away the seam allowance is 12.5. So I know that this is going to work out to be what it should be if all my measurements are right. If I don't shrink my fabric by using a lot of steam and or moisture from starch. So I know that if I do what I'm supposed to do, then this should come out to be exactly what I want it to be. Okay. So here are two of the units that I need for my 4-patch that I will be putting together to create the final block. I'm going to just measure at 6.5 to see if everything lines up the way that it's supposed to, just to double check. Because if I have to adjust the seams, especially if you're making more than one of these, you want to make sure that everything lines up the way it's supposed to the first time and then adjust for everything else. Otherwise, everything else will be off too. So these 2 units are finished. And then we have 2 more units to go before we can put everything together. So the orange is going to go through the center of the block like this. And then what you're going to have are 2 additional corners that are here. And then what is going to happen, if I can pull these apart, and hopefully I counted them right because I'm not counting 6. Oh yeah, they are. A little stuck together there. I mean, counting 4, I should say. They're going to go here, like that. Okay. So those are going to be those 2 units that need to be finished. And they're just mirrored. So if I turn this around, you can see it's the same block. I just laid it out the way that it needed to go. So I can just stack these. And again, I want to check for those things because if I'm making a lot of blocks like this, I want to make sure everything's together. So this is like a 4-patch. 1 patch, 2 patch, 3 patch, 4. So I can now either sew these 2 together and these 2 together, or I can sew these 2 together and these 2 together. It doesn't make a difference. So we line these up and we'll stitch. And we can actually take both of these and get them done rather than one by one. And then let's take these 2 and we'll line these up. Okay, let's pull these out. Everything is chained together. We can clip, take these to our iron. Excuse me. So when we take these to the iron, we're going to make a decision. If I press this way, I want to press this way. So they're actually going under the dark side and the seams are going in the opposite directions. That's going to help us to nest. But again, you can line up those seams if you like and do it that way. It's totally up to you. Again, you don't want a lot of pulling on your fabric. You're just pressing. You're not ironing. Oops. You're not pulling and you're not stretching. So I'm not moving the iron around a lot. I'm just letting it sit on top of that seam so that it lays nice and flat. If I feel like my seams are off, what I do is take it to my big iron once I've finished everything, the quilt top, and I will steam it. I will put starch on it. I will do everything at that point because at least it'll be shrinking at the same time, but my seams will still kind of stay pulled, if you will. Um, so I just prefer to do it that way. But the trick in most of this is that if you pre-wash your fabric, you're also pre-shrinking it. And if you pre-shrink it as you're pre-washing it, or starching the heck out of it, the less likely it is that it's going to shrink at different rates and create problems for you later. So even if, and you'll see people who use steam when they create quilts, usually, and the key word is usually, they are washing or pre-starching. So they've gotten a lot of that, shrinkage out of the way before they start the block, or before they start the construction of the quilts or the quilt blocks. Pre-cuts are a lot harder to wash. Some people do wash them or pre-starch them at least to get some of that shrinkage out of the way. But they're harder to wash because if you throw them in the washing machine, you're going to lose you're going to lose a lot of fabric because not only is it going to shrink, but it's going to shred or fray as well. So those edges, these right here on the edge of these, all these little strings are going to fray if you wash them ahead of time. And that's from the agitation of the machine, just the handling of the fabric. So if you can help it, you don't want to do that. Okay, I can spin these if they'll let me spin. If they won't let me spin, I can try it the other way. Should let me spin. Just gonna pop that thread a little bit. There it is. Just use my little finger. This helps to reduce some of the bulk in the center. Looks like a little 4-patch. And then let's turn this over. My fabric is fighting me just a little bit. So I'm using both hands to kind of keep it flat. I'll give it that final press. There's a little bit of a lump right here, but it's not going to bother anything. But I did want to make sure it was flat on that side. And let's do the second one. Again, I try to do the spin, if you will, before I take it to my iron. And that's just loosening up a couple stitches right before the seams. And you'll see all these are going in this direction. That's what I mean by a spin. Okay. Let's get rid of this extra piece of thread just hanging there. Okay. So now we have all of our smaller units done. It's time to put the block together. So these two are going to go here and face each other like this. And these two are going to go this way so that all of those line up like an Irish chain almost. Okay. So this is what the final block will look like once all the units are put together. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So what do we have? A 4 patch. You could do the measurement on it to see if it's 6.5. When you line these up, you'll notice that the seams do not line up, which is great because then we don't have to worry about trying to get our seams to line up. It's less accuracy and precision that needs to happen when constructing the block. It's going to happen when we put the two rows together, but at least we don't have to do each individual piece and then the rows. So again, you can see how those seams right now don't line up. So I think that some of the easiest quilts to put together are those quilts that have the least amount of seams to line up. I didn't say they were my favorite. I just said that they're easier. So like when we talk about what could be beginner friendly, part of what could be beginner friendly is the fact that we don't have to try and line up a whole bunch of seams. Okay, these look and if I flip this, these look the exact same way. So you can see them like that. So you don't have to lay everything out together. You absolutely could lay them out in one direction and then make them and then you spin. And that's how you get that. It'll make like it, and again, this just makes your life a little bit easier when you see what it's supposed to look like because then you can mass produce your blocks and know that they're going to work if you do them all exactly the same. So I'm just going to press these towards the 4 patches away from the half square triangles. So the seams are going in opposite directions. Again, I'm just pressing with my iron, not ironing. Now, because I didn't cut that chain, they stay together as a unit. And now I can pull these up. You'll see that still no seam matches except for that center seam. So that's great for me because I don't have to think about anything lining up except for this. I'm nesting those together and I'll clip them because this is a little bit bigger and I don't want to hold it down here because that might throw this seam off. So by clipping it, it holds that together and I can work with the first half of the block. I'm going to keep everything nice and straight. Make sure my seams are going in the right direction. We're just making sure that everything is nice and lined up. The seams are going in the direction that I want them to go into. I did a little bit of a back stitch. Everything's lined up here and the block is together. So now we can take this back to our to our iron. There are quite a few places that I did not cut some of my straggling threads. I can attack that at this time. Before I press this, I can open this up. If this swirls, I left the chain together here, so I do want to snip that. If there's some way to pull those apart if I want to open this up, or at least press on the one side. I have to play with the seams just a little bit. And it may fight me, and if it fights me too much, then I don't need to do it that way, which is fine. Because sometimes it wants to fight me, and sometimes it'll lay flat with no problem. And you can open the seam if you like. You could have some seams flat closed. You can have some seams open. That's up to you. And again, I'm just pressing. Sometimes there's a little bit of movement with pressing that simulates ironing, but I'm pressing. And I really just want to take the time to make sure that any of the folds or the lumps or the bumps, I'm flattening out as best as possible. If they don't flatten out, then I can use just a little bit of my spray starch, right? It wasn't even a lot. And I'm using a mist, but that'll help to kind of help lay that down. And I get a better look at the end. Okay, and here we go. Hayes Corner is done. So we finished one block on this lovely Saturday afternoon, and we are going to work on probably another one, but not right now. So we will finish this one. That one's already cut out as well if I do this one, but this is an easy block, so I might save that for Monday or Tuesday when I don't have a lot of time. But so far, we're down to block number 15. Stay tuned. We have at least 5 more to go.